Welcome to the 7th day of June, 2023. It's a Wednesday. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by Cowboy State Daily. Beautiful shot there, the Heart Mountain area with just a whole different series of different levels of clouds there. This is looking a lot like the afternoons with those billowing, building clouds that lead to those afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. And still lots of rich green showing up on the mountain slopes and across the prairies, and that's going to continue as the blocking pattern, this stuck pattern, remains in place. So this axis of moisture, which we've been talking about for quite a while, just continues to be right on the divide. That continues again today. Slow moving, heavy rain producing thunderstorms did yesterday cause several flash flood warnings and advisories for flooding across parts of Colorado and Wyoming and elsewhere across the Intermountain West, and that's going to be a concern again today. This deeper moisture, the axis, gets a little bit of a push more to the east out on into the plains. So today is again one of those days where it's the Continental Divide, really the I-25 corridor area, and then points west from there that'll have the most action. Also, we'll give you a reservoir level update across the western United States. Got some great photos coming in from these heavy rain-producing thunderstorms yesterday. A lot of them did produce hail. Luckily, nothing really big. This is a shot from the northern Bighorn Mountains above Lovell of some hail piling up right here and some heavy downpours, as you can see with those raindrops coming in. These thunderstorms tapping into this deep axis of moisture just have a lot of water to work with. Also, for those of you in southeastern Wyoming last night, you really got a show. Got to see some really interesting clouds as the thunderstorm that developed over Cheyenne yesterday evening was a thunderstorm that literally just came together right over town. And you had these very ragged edges, dark clouds, the base of the clouds. This is showing the updraft. When you see ragged clouds like this, underneath the base of the clouds, the air is rushing up. You're getting the updraft beginning to form. And you also, in many areas, saw circulation. What looked like maybe the formation, a cyclonic formation of what maybe was ended up being a tornado or a funnel cloud. That really never came to be. But boy, the clouds with the time of day, the raggedness of the clouds due to the updraft forming, and then as the updraft matured, the thunderstorm then developed right over town, and we had some very heavy rain. And you can see just later, that's one of those circulations I talked about that was very visible for most folks in the capital city of Cheyenne yesterday. And then we went from the updraft and the thunderstorm forming to the rain that came down right there as the thunderstorm matured. And then also, like the shot in the Bighorns, lots of hail, luckily in the small fashion. The satellite image today looks almost identical to the satellite image I showed you yesterday. The swirl of clouds, the upper level low stuck over south central areas of California. There's the axis of moisture as the pattern is stuck. Now there's a name for this pattern. When you study meteorology and learn about patterns that repeat themselves, we call it an omega block. And if you notice, there's the low here in California, low in the northeastern United States, and there's this low that's just been stuck here over the northern plains and the Corn Belt. This kind of goes back and forth. So we have three features: the low, the high, the low. When you have a stagnant pattern of a low, a high, and a low, if you were to draw the shape of what the jet stream pattern is doing around those pressure systems, you get what's called an omega block. The low feeds the high, helps build the high helps build and feed the low. So basically, the pattern maintains itself. And so when you get into these situations like this, notice the shape, and it looks just like the Greek letter omega. So we have what's called an omega pattern. And so they tend to be persistent. They tend to be hard to break. They eventually break down. They do. But these omega patterns tend to focus moisture and weather in one location and dryness in the other. So that's why it's been persistently dry in this part of the country here, persistently wet here, and it's turned to cool and wet again up into New England. So this omega block pattern is also showing up. Look at this. This is for Saturday. It is the same situation, generally speaking. So that means the day-to-day weather just doesn't change very much. So the high humidity air is right along the divide with the precipitable water right there. And then focusing in by Sunday, it's still there. Moves a little bit further east out into the plains, but it's still there. So if we step through the next few days, these are the areas that will have the most thunderstorm activity late afternoon and evenings today, tomorrow, and then as we get on into Friday. You can see as we step through this that eastward shift by Friday of maybe the deeper moisture getting a little bit of a bigger push out to those plains areas. So better rain for Nebraska, South Dakota, Southwest North Dakota, down into Kansas and Oklahoma. These areas right here could use some rain. They're going to get some while the rains continue out here. This is the precipitation forecast through Sunday evening. So you can see it's the same areas getting the rain, but getting a little bit further out to the east. Keep in mind when I show you a map like this, trying to keep track of how much a thunderstorm will produce in terms of rainfall is very, very difficult. So you'll get areas that get more or less in this pattern. But if you're in the green, the blue, the yellow, the brighter colors, you're in the area that will see the more frequent shower and thunderstorm activity. So let's go through some of the reservoir storage in the western United States. We still have a fair amount of snow to still come out of the mountains. Lake Oroville, its full pool level is 900 feet, and it's just short of that. So you can see where we were a year ago. This is Lake Oroville a year ago. What a difference a year makes. So remember, when you get into drought, you're going to get out. When you're not in drought and you're wet, you'll go back to a drought. The back and forth, the cycling nature of weather and climate is something that goes on. And right now we're just on an upcycle with this more wet pattern that's developing. So that big reservoir in Northern California back to near full levels. Look at the difference of where we are with Lake Powell. So this is a 12-month graph that goes back to June of 2022 to where we are right now. So you can obviously see the inflow into Lake Powell is really remarkable change from where we were a year ago. It's up almost 33 feet from a year ago. There is a lot more room, obviously, for Lake Powell to take on more. Needs a lot more, but certainly I don't think anybody saw a change of 33 feet from year to year. At this time last year, the mantra was much different about Lake Powell. Thankfully, the mountain snows and the rains have returned to help out there. Same situation for Lake Mead. Got a long way to go to get to full pool. Another 200 feet or so needed. But where we were a year ago, which is the green line, you can see the trend direction is the opposite. Flaming Gorge, quite a remarkable turnaround at Flaming Gorge as well. There's last year's trend line right there. So that's all good news. If you look at some of the bigger reservoirs in Wyoming, we're not full yet with Seminole, but it's up considerably from where it was a year ago at 75%. This is where we are at Glendo at 89%. And then as you look at Buffalo Bill Reservoir, 86% full. So good news, there's more inflow to come in before we're completely done with the runoff. When we look at the new European model, this is for the next full month here coming up. The seasonal model from the European came out, and it shows that for the month of June, this axis that you see right here for the month of June is basically showing up. So for the month of June, we're going to continue to be wet in the Intermountain West and the adjacent plains. This persistent dryness in the Corn Belt and the Great Lakes in the east continues to show up. We're also delaying the monsoon, and I'm going to talk about the monsoon here probably next week, but the monsoon in Arizona and New Mexico is delayed. It's delayed because the winter was so cool down there, and I'll talk about that next week. But for Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, the adjacent plains, and just on the other side of the divide, June looks like it's going to continue the trend of overall being wetter than normal. Look at those temperatures for the month of June. Trending below average in the blue areas, warmer than average elsewhere. So the coolness trend continues. Well, where are we with La Nina and El Nino? Well, you can see right here that La Nina is gone. We have the warmer sea surface temperature anomalies here for the month, building and growing westward across South America, going across the equator region to the west, and this is by August. So you can see that we're going to be technically, officially in El Nino by then, if not before then. So that continues to be the trend with the warming Pacific, and we have seen in the West the response being towards a cooler, wetter pattern. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.